Lyrae walked through the grand halls of the Starwood Dominion with a calm but alert gaze. Every step she took echoed lightly against the polished floors. She was dressed in flowing robes of deep green and silver that shimmered in the light. Valor, her pet dragon, followed closely behind. His scales were a brilliant emerald that seemed to catch the light and move like liquid. He moved silently and with grace that only centuries of experience could bring. Lyrae felt the weight of the coming event on her shoulders but showed no sign of fear. She knew that this union with Claire, a human, was essential. The Dominion needed peace and the neighboring human worlds could offer a chance for stability. Lyrae had heard stories of humans being weak and fragile, but she had seen something different in Claire that others did not notice. There was a strength that was quiet but undeniable. The halls were filled with noble elves moving about. Their long robes and adorned jewelry showed their status and wealth. Many of them whispered as Lyrae passed by. Some looked with curiosity while others with disapproval. Marrying a human was unheard of for someone of her rank. They saw it as a foolish move, one that could weaken the Dominion. Lyrae felt their eyes but did not turn to acknowledge them. Her focus was on the task at hand. Valor moved beside her, sensing the tension in the air. He flicked his tail and lowered his head slightly. Lyrae knew he understood the danger. The dragon had always been more than a companion. He was a protector and a guide. Seeing things that she could not dot as they reached the central chamber, Lyrae found Claire waiting. Claire was tall and well-built. Her posture was confident and her eyes held a calmness that seemed to radiate outwards. She wore a simple tunic of blue and white that contrasted with the grandness of the Elven Hall. Her presence alone drew attention, and Lyrae could see that many of the nobles were watching her with a mixture of awe and suspicion. Claire smiled slightly, a small gesture that carried warmth and reassurance. Lyrae felt a wave of relief knowing that the human was ready for this moment. Valor lowered his head towards Claire, and she reached out gently. Her hand hovered above his scales and then rested lightly. The dragon made a soft low sound, a sign of recognition and acceptance. Lyrae watched them with a small smile. This moment was significant. If Valor, the dragon who had been her companion for centuries, accepted Claire, then perhaps the others could as well. There was a deep connection forming between human and dragon, a bond that Lyrae knew was rare and powerful. The ceremony room was vast and decorated with crystal and gold. Light from the high windows bathed the floor in shifting patterns. Lyrae took a deep breath and stepped forward. The nobles gathered around, their eyes fixed on the pair. Some whispered to one another while others tried to hide their expressions. Lyrae's heart did not waver. She knew that this marriage was more than a ceremony. It was a promise, a pact that could change the fate of many worlds. As the officiant began the formal words, Lyrae glanced at Claire. Her calm expression gave Lyrae strength. She remembered all the preparation and all the doubts that had come before. Many had tried to dissuade her, speaking of human weakness and the risks of alien politics. Yet here she was, standing with a human who had shown courage, intelligence, and an unusual resilience. The words of the ceremony flowed over them, but their eyes remained locked on each other. There was an understanding that went beyond spoken language. They both knew the stakes and the commitment required. After the ceremony, the nobles approached. Some offered cautious congratulations while others maintained their distance. Lyrae and Claire responded with polite nods and smiles. Valor stayed close to Lyrae, his eyes scanning the crowd. He sensed the unease and potential threats even among those who appeared friendly. Lyrae was grateful for his presence. His instincts were sharper than any humans or elves and could detect dangers before they arose. That evening, Lyrae and Claire walked through the gardens. The moonlight cast silver patterns across the flowers and the paths. Lyrae spoke softly about the history of the Dominion and the importance of the alliance. Claire listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions. It became clear that she had not only a mind for strategy but also a heart for peace. Lyrae felt her respect and trust for Claire grow with each passing moment. The bond between them was strengthening not only for political reasons but for mutual understanding and admiration. Valor curled his long body around a nearby fountain, keeping a watchful eye on the surroundings. Occasionally, he flicked his tail or adjusted his position, signaling his attention and readiness. Larray felt a sense of relief knowing that her companion was vigilant. There would be challenges ahead, but with Claire by her side and Valor close, she felt prepared to face them. The night continued with quiet conversation and shared stories of their lives. Larray learned more about Claire's human world, and Claire learned about the ancient customs of the elves. There was laughter and moments of surprise, small signs of connection that promised more in the days to come. As the first light of dawn began to appear, Larray and Claire returned to the chambers. There was a feeling of calm, but also a silent acknowledgement that the peace they had worked to create was fragile. The nobles of the Dominion had opinions and ambitions that could threaten the alliance. Larray understood that they would have to remain vigilant. Yet, in that moment, she allowed herself a sense of hope. The marriage was complete, and for the first time, the possibility of a future without conflict seemed real. Valor let out a soft sound of approval and nuzzled Larray's side. She smiled and reached out to pat him gently. Together they stood with Claire, ready to face whatever challenges the future held. The morning light filled the halls of the Starwood Dominion with a pale gold glow. Larray walked beside Claire, her steps slow and measured. Valor moved silently behind them, his eyes scanning every corner. The peace that had come with the marriage felt fragile. Whispers and cautious glances followed them wherever they went. Some nobles nodded politely while others watched with suspicion. Larray had expected this and did not react. She had learned long ago that appearances could be deceiving and that careful observation often revealed the true intentions of those around her. Claire moved with calm assurance. Her presence seemed to ease some of the tension in the hall. She had quickly adapted to the customs of the elves and showed respect for their traditions. Larray noticed the subtle gestures, the slight bow, the careful choice of words. It was clear that Claire was intelligent and thoughtful. Even the more skeptical nobles seemed to hesitate before questioning her actions. Valor shifted slightly, signaling his approval. He had lived through centuries of wars and court intrigue and rarely showed signs of satisfaction. This small sign told Larray that Claire was not just a human diplomat but someone extraordinary. As they reached the council chamber, a sense of unease settled over the room. The council members were gathered in their usual formation. Their expressions ranged from polite curiosity to thinly veiled distrust. Larray and Claire stood together, their hands lightly brushing as a gesture of solidarity. The room seemed to hum with anticipation. The council began to discuss matters of security and trade. Larray listened carefully, her mind assessing each speaker and the implications of their words. She knew that the humans and elves had different approaches and priorities. Balancing these perspectives would require skill, patience, and careful strategy. Suddenly, a warning signal sounded in the hall. Valor reacted immediately, his head turning sharply towards the source. Claire followed his movement, her instincts guiding her. The council members were confused, unsure of the cause. Larray took a deep breath and moved forward. They found a small group of rogue operatives attempting to breach the council room. Their movements were swift and precise. Claire reacted without hesitation. She stepped forward, her body poised, and intercepted one of the operatives before they could reach the council. Larray watched in awe as Claire displayed a combination of strength and agility that seemed beyond human limits. Valor leaped forward, his claws and wings creating a barrier between the council and the attackers. The operatives hesitated, unsure how to face a dragon and a human acting in perfect coordination. Claire moved with calculated precision, disarming and subduing the attackers without unnecessary force. Larray felt a surge of relief and pride. This display showed not only Claire's courage but also her ability to protect others. The council members were silent, their previous doubts replaced by a mixture of awe and respect. The threat was neutralized, and the intruders were restrained. The council took a moment to absorb what had just happened. Larray knew that the incident would be remembered, and that Claire's reputation would grow from this moment. After the event, Larray led Claire and Valor to a quieter area of the Dominion. The gardens offered a serene escape from the tension of politics. Claire took a deep breath and ran her fingers along the petals of the flowers. The fragrance and colors seemed to calm her and reminded Lyrae of the beauty that still existed in their world. They walked together along the paths, discussing the encounter and its implications. Lyrae shared her knowledge of the Dominion and the potential threats that could arise from internal factions. Claire listened intently, asking questions that revealed both intelligence and curiosity. Lyrae realized that this human was not only strong in body, but also in mind. Her insight and willingness to learn were qualities that could strengthen their alliance. Vaylor rested on a low stone wall, his gaze shifting between Lyrae and Claire. He had sensed the latent danger in the council and in the operatives. His instincts had guided them to act swiftly. Lyrae placed a hand on his scales, feeling the warmth and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The dragon had always been a symbol of power and wisdom, and his approval of Claire was significant. Lyrae felt a deep sense of connection between all three of them, a bond formed not by duty alone but by trust and mutual respect. As the day continued, Lyrae and Claire returned to the chambers to review the council documents and plans. Claire's attention to detail and ability to analyze information impressed Lyrae. They worked together, comparing notes and discussing strategies. Lyrae began to see the potential for a new approach to diplomacy and defense, one that combined human adaptability with elven tradition. Vaylor remained nearby, alert and ready, his presence a reminder of the constant vigilance required to maintain peace. That evening, Lyrae and Claire stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights of the Dominion shimmered like stars below. The wind carried a cool and calming presence. They spoke quietly about the future, their hopes, and the challenges ahead. Lyrae felt a growing admiration for Claire, not only for her abilities but for her courage to face an unfamiliar world with confidence. Claire's human perspective offered insights that Lyrae had never considered. The partnership between them was becoming stronger and more meaningful with each passing day. Vaylor curled beside them, his head resting lightly on the balcony edge. His eyes reflected the city lights, and he seemed content with the unfolding events. Lyrae knew that the days ahead would not be easy. Political intrigue, external threats, and the complexities of an interspecies alliance would test their resolve. Yet, with Claire's strength, intelligence, and courage, and with Vaylor's wisdom and power, she felt a renewed sense of hope. The bonds between them were solidifying, preparing them for the challenges that would come. In the quiet moments of the evening, Lyrae allowed herself to feel a sense of possibility and trust. They were united not just by a marriage of necessity but by a growing understanding and shared purpose that could shape the destiny of their worlds. The day began with a cool light spilling across the Dominion halls. Lyrae and Claire moved together through the corridors. Their steps were calm but purposeful. Vaylor followed, his emerald scales gleaming softly in the morning light. The city outside was alive with activity. Citizens of the Dominion went about their duties unaware of the tension that hung in the air for the noble circles. Lyrae had sensed that some factions were unhappy with the human in their midst. Yet Claire's presence brought a sense of steadiness that was rare among visitors. In the training grounds, Claire practiced movements that were unfamiliar to most humans. Lyrae observed silently as Claire moved with a fluidity that seemed almost unnatural. Vaylor circled above, his wings cutting the air quietly. Claire had been learning elven defensive techniques and combining them with her own strength and instincts. It was a sight that few had witnessed and even fewer had fully understood. Lyrae could see the surprise in the eyes of the guards and soldiers who had gathered to watch. They had not expected a human to match the discipline and skill of the elves. Later, the council called for a meeting about the recent incidents in the outer districts. Rogue groups had attempted to stir unrest and destabilize the fragile peace. Lyrae and Claire attended together. As they entered, some council members exchanged uneasy glances. The presence of Claire challenged their assumptions. The discussion began with formal reports, and tensions rose as accusations and concerns were voiced. Claire listened quietly, absorbing the details. Then she spoke. Her voice was calm but firm. She offered solutions and insights that no elf had considered. Lyrae watched the reactions. Many were surprised, some skeptical, and others impressed. Claire had a way of seeing problems differently and proposing actions that were logical yet bold. After the meeting, Lyrae led Claire and Valor to a secluded area of the city. They walked along quiet streets lined with flowering trees. Claire spoke about her human world, sharing stories of survival, cooperation, and courage. Lyrae realized that the human perspective was valuable in ways she had not understood. Claire's calm confidence in the face of danger and unfamiliar customs gave Lyrae hope. The bond between them was growing stronger. It was built not only on the marriage but also on trust and mutual respect. Valor watched silently, occasionally flicking his tail or adjusting his position. The dragon had seen warriors of many kinds, but there was something about Claire that drew his attention. Lyrae sensed that he recognized a rare potential in the human. That evening, an alert reached the palace. A group of insurgents had been spotted near the northern border. Lyrae, Claire, and Valor moved swiftly to respond. The journey was tense. The landscape shifted from city spires to wild plains. The insurgents were skilled, but not prepared for the combination of human instincts, elven strategy, and dragon strength. Claire led with clarity and focus. She assessed positions and instructed maneuvers that maximized their advantages. Valor soared above, providing both reconnaissance and protection. Lyrae coordinated with local forces, impressed by Claire's ability to adapt quickly to changing conditions. When the insurgents attacked, Claire stood at the front. Her movements were precise and powerful. She shielded those around her and struck with controlled force. The insurgents faltered as they faced resistance unlike anything they had seen. Valor's presence added a force of nature that the attackers could not contend with. Lyrae fought alongside Claire, but she realized that the human's ability went beyond physical strength. Claire seemed to anticipate moves, understanding patterns and weaknesses instinctively. It was a talent that surprised even the most experienced elves. When the skirmish ended, the insurgents were defeated and captured. No major injuries occurred among the defending forces. The victory was quiet but undeniable. Back at the palace, word of the battle spread quickly. Many elves who had doubted the human's capabilities began to see her in a new light. Lyrae felt both pride and relief. Claire had proven that humans could be strong, adaptable, and valuable allies. Valor curled around them in the garden, a silent sign of approval and respect. Lyrae approached Claire and placed a hand gently on her arm. There was no need for words. The understanding between them was clear. They had faced danger together and emerged stronger. The bond that had begun as a political necessity was transforming into something deeper. Mutual respect, trust, and admiration were forming in its place. As night fell, they stood on the balcony overlooking the Dominion city. The lights shimmered like distant stars. Lyrae reflected on the events of the day. Challenges had arisen, yet Claire had responded with courage, skill, and intelligence. The human's presence had changed the perception of their people and had begun to shape the future of the Dominion. Valor rested nearby, his eyes reflecting the city lights and a calm assurance. Lyrae knew that the path ahead would not be easy. Threats, both political and physical, would continue to test them. Yet with Claire by her side and Valor as their guide, she felt ready to face what was to come. The day ended with quiet conversations, shared plans, and a sense of hope that had been absent for many years. Together, they had begun to forge a future where humans and elves could work together, and where strength and courage were recognized beyond the limits of race or species. The sun rose slowly over the Starwood Dominion, casting a soft golden light across the city. Lyrae, Claire, and Valor walked along the outer walls, observing the landscape below. The city was quiet in the early hours, but the tension in the air was palpable. Lyrae could sense the unease among some of the nobles and citizens. There were whispers of discontent and fears that the human had been given too much influence. Yet Lyrae also felt hope and confidence in Claire. The human's abilities and calm demeanor were becoming a source of strength for her and for the Dominion. In the training fields, Claire demonstrated new techniques she had been practicing. Her movements were precise and strong, showing a combination of human instinct and elven strategy. Lyrae watched closely, learning and understanding the methods. Valor circled above, occasionally landing to observe more closely. The dragon's presence added an air of authority and awe. Soldiers and nobles who had gathered to watch could not hide their surprise. Claire's skill and confidence were beyond what anyone had expected. Some nodded in approval, others in disbelief. Yet all had to acknowledge that the human had earned respect through action, not words. Later, reports arrived from the northern borders. Rogue factions had been spotted gathering and preparing for an attack. Lorray and Claire immediately planned a response. They moved swiftly, coordinating with local forces and assessing the terrain. Claire's strategic thinking was clear as she suggested positions, defenses, and patrol patterns. Lorray followed her lead while maintaining communication with the palace. Valor flew above, scouting and signaling potential threats. The trio moved with an understanding that had grown from shared experience and trust. When they arrived near the border, the insurgents were already attempting to breach the defenses. Claire took the front, moving with precision and confidence. Lorray coordinated with the elven guards while Valor provided aerial support. The insurgents were skilled, but they were unprepared for the combined force. Claire's movements were fluid and strong. She intercepted attacks and protected those around her with a quiet but powerful determination. Valor's presence alone intimidated the attackers, and his strikes were precise and devastating. Lorray was impressed not only by Claire's strength but also by her ability to think and act under pressure. It was clear that she possessed abilities that were rare and valuable. The battle was intense, but the coordination and trust among Lorray, Claire, and Valor made the difference. The insurgents were defeated with minimal casualties on the defending side. Soldiers and nobles alike watched in awe. Many who had doubted the human now saw her as a figure of power and reliability. Lorray felt a deep sense of pride and respect. Claire had proven that humans could not only survive but excel in situations that required skill, courage, and intelligence. After the battle, they returned to the palace. The streets were alive with citizens who had heard of the victory. There were murmurs of admiration and surprise. Lorray, Claire, and Valor walked through the city, acknowledging the people who had gathered to see them. The bond between human and elf and between both and the dragon was becoming a symbol of unity and strength. Lorray felt a growing admiration for Claire. She had faced danger with courage and wisdom, and her calm presence had inspired those around her. That evening, Lorray and Claire stood together on the balcony of the palace, overlooking the city. The lights shimmered like stars across the landscape. Valor rested beside them, his scales reflecting the soft glow. They spoke quietly about the events of the day and the challenges ahead. Lorray shared her thoughts on the political implications, and Claire listened, offering insights and suggestions that were thoughtful and strategic. Their conversation was calm but purposeful, filled with mutual respect and understanding. The human's perspective offered solutions and ideas that Lorray had not considered, and the elven experience guided the implementation. Together they formed a partnership that was both strong and balanced. As the night deepened, they walked through the palace gardens. The flowers and fountains provided a peaceful contrast to the day's events. Lorray could feel the bond between them growing stronger. Claire's presence brought calm, focus, and courage. Valor moved silently beside them, alert but relaxed. Lorray knew that the road ahead would not be easy. Political intrigue, threats from rogue factions, and the complexities of maintaining an interspecies alliance would challenge them. Yet with Claire's strength, intelligence, and courage, and with Valor's guidance and power, she felt prepared. The events of the day had shown that they could face danger together and emerge stronger. The bond between them was more than political necessity. It was trust, respect, and a growing understanding that could shape the future of the Dominion and the human worlds beyond. In the quiet of the night, Lorray allowed herself a sense of hope and confidence that had been absent for many years. The sky above the crystal wastes was a mix of gold and red as dawn broke across the horizon. Lorray, Claire, and Valor stood on a rise, surveying the battlefield below. The insurgents had gathered in large numbers, their formations sharp and ready. The air was tense, charged with anticipation and fear. Lorray felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. This battle would determine not only the stability of the Dominion but the safety of countless worlds. Claire stood beside her, calm and composed. Her presence was a steadying force, a quiet assurance in the face of the approaching storm. Valor shifted, wings spread wide, ready to take flight at any moment. The insurgents advanced, confident in their numbers and strategy. Lyrae raised a hand, signaling a pause. She turned to Claire, who nodded, understanding without words. Together they formulated a plan that combined human ingenuity, elven strategy, and dragon power. Claire's insights were clear and precise. She positioned the defenders to take advantage of terrain and natural obstacles. Lyrae coordinated the elven forces, ensuring that every unit knew its role. Valor's presence alone demanded attention and respect from the enemy. The dragon's roar echoed across the plains, a warning of the force that awaited any who dared to challenge them. As the battle began, Claire moved to the front lines. Her movements were swift, precise, and powerful. She intercepted attacks and shielded those around her. Lyrae worked closely with her, coordinating movements and responding to changes in the enemy's strategy. Valor swooped down, striking with speed and force, disrupting enemy formations and creating openings. The insurgents were skilled, but they were unprepared for the unity and strength of their opponents. Claire's abilities became increasingly evident. She seemed to anticipate the enemy's moves, responding with a combination of strength, agility, and instinct that left the attackers off balance. The battle intensified as the insurgents tried to regroup and push forward. Claire's actions were decisive. She moved quickly, protecting the vulnerable and taking advantage of weaknesses. Her strikes were controlled, precise, and powerful. Valor added a force of nature that the enemy could not match. Lyrae observed closely, recognizing the hidden potential in the human beside her. The combined efforts of human, elf, and dragon created a force that no enemy could easily overcome. The insurgents began to falter, their morale shaken by the unexpected strength and coordination of their opponents. As the battle reached its peak, Claire tapped into a power that few had seen. A resonance energy flowed from her, an invisible force that disrupted the enemy's magic and bent the environment to their advantage. Rocks and dust lifted, creating barriers and shields. The insurgents struggled against this new force, unable to anticipate its effects. Lyrae watched in awe as Claire controlled the flow of power with calm determination. Valor flew beside her, supporting and amplifying the energy. Together, they created a formidable presence that reshaped the battlefield and turned the tide of combat. When the dust settled, the insurgents were defeated, scattered, and captured. The defenders had suffered minimal losses. Soldiers, nobles, and citizens alike looked on with amazement and admiration. Claire had revealed a strength and power that none had expected. Lyrae approached her, feeling a mix of pride, relief, and respect. Valor lowered his head, acknowledging the human as a bearer of rare and extraordinary potential. The bond between them was undeniable, strengthened through shared danger and triumph. As the day ended, they returned to the city. Citizens lined the streets, cheering and celebrating the victory. The story of Claire's power and courage spread quickly, changing perceptions and earning respect across the Dominion. Lyrae walked beside her, sharing quiet words of gratitude and admiration. Claire's presence had transformed the hearts and minds of those who had once doubted humans. Valor moved silently beside them, a constant reminder of the bond between dragon and companions. That night, Lyrae, Claire, and Valor stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the city bathed in soft light. The air was calm, a contrast to the chaos of the day. They spoke quietly, reflecting on the events in the future. Lyrae recognized that the path ahead would still have challenges, but with Claire's strength, courage, and wisdom, and Valor's guidance and power, they were ready. The alliance between human and elf, with the dragon as their guardian, had proven that unity and trust could overcome even the greatest threats. In the quiet of the night, Lyrae allowed herself to feel hope, pride, and a deep sense of connection. Together, they had changed the destiny of the Dominion and created a future, where peace was not just a fragile agreement but a shared reality. The human had revealed a power that no alien had ever seen, and it would shape the legacy of all who had witnessed it.